So you want to get started in automated trading and creating your own algo or bot for the crypto markets, but you have no idea where to even start. You've heard some of this terminology thrown around and you don't quite understand it. I want to help you break down some of the very basics of developing an automated trading algorithm, some of the tools that I use, and some of the terminology around this space and how you go about connecting to these exchanges. So what we see on the screen here is I've got my own user interface for my own market making algo that I've developed, and this one is connected to Paradex right now. Paradex is a decentralized crypto exchange, and you can see it placing orders in the order book here. You can see these flashing. So how do I go about doing this? And kind of let's take a step back even and what's some of the terminology if you're not even familiar with either programming or just programming around um, trading in general. So most exchanges, nearly all exchanges, have something that they call an API. So API stands for Applications Programming Interface. And basically what this means is they have a kind of a window into their system that allows you to connect any sort of application you want. And the way that most of these APIs work for the crypto exchanges is they present a window to their world where it doesn't matter what language you're using to create your application is. It can be anything. A lot of people are using Python or TypeScript or Rust. I'm using Java personally for my stuff, C Sharp. So the way that these exchanges work is pretty much any language is fair game for developing your algo. Now, most of these APIs come in two flavors, and most exchanges support both of these. One is called REST, and REST is a web-based way to interact with their servers. So basically, your requests go over the internet encrypted, and REST is a way to request and then get a response back from their services. So you say, I want to know what the bid and ask on Bitcoin is, and then it gives you back the bid and ask in Bitcoin. I want to place a trade for Ethereum, and then it responds and says, I have placed your trade, or there was an issue placing your trade, or something like that. The other flavor of API is called WebSockets, and this is more of a streaming data service, meaning that it's really good for getting, say, market quotes or order flow data, order book data like level two, anything that where there's a lot of data getting generated and you just want to like read it like a fire hose coming out from a fire hose. Uh, WebSockets is perfect for that sort of thing. So that way you're not having to constantly hit, requests from their REST service saying, what's the price now? What's the price now? What's the price now? With WebSockets, it's just sending it to you as soon as it's updated. So that's great in most cases with streaming data. Now, some exchanges also support WebSockets doing request response, which is also pretty cool because there's actually two pipes in a WebSocket. There's like a pipe coming down and there's a pipe going back to their server. And the nice thing about having the WebSocket for request response is you already got that connection established. And that way you can send a request to say place a trade, it comes back. You don't need to like reestablish a connection to the server. And so that cuts down on some latency. So if you're doing a high frequency algo and latency is super important, then WebSockets could help with that. Now, there's ways to tweak REST as well to help minimize latency and try to keep connections open and stuff like that. But WebSockets by default will just remain open as long as you keep them open. So not all exchanges support the request response kind of mechanism within a WebSocket, but um, all of them support the streaming data aspect. So given this information, now what do we do? So let me kind of show you what this looks like, at least on Paradex. And It's pretty cool. So they have kind of a documentation section where they got all their APIs and the functions that those APIs can do laid out pretty clearly. So if you go to their docs, they have two sections here. They got a REST up here at the top, the REST API reference and the WebSockets API reference. So let's open up the REST and API reference and see what we got here. So some of the very basic things that they define are um, their addresses for both their test environment and their production environment. So super important there. Quick start. Now, authentication. So some of these APIs, they fall into two separate buckets. There's API requests that require authentication and those that don't. So like, let's say you just want to get market data. You want streaming quotes from a bunch of different assets, for example. You don't need to authenticate for that. You don't need to have an account. You don't need to connect your wallet, anything like that. You can just request it from their server and you'll start receiving it. Now, other types of requests require you to connect your wallet or get an API key. Basically, you need some way to authenticate yourself to their server. So anything for like placing trades. Some exchanges, depending on who it is, require for getting order updates from an account, you need to authenticate. Paradex is one of those. Hyperliquid, you can get order updates from anybody's account on the system because it's all public knowledge. So you basically can request, you can say, I want to see the order updates from this particular address. And so if you kind of want to follow along and see how in a particular account is trading, you can do that. But on Paradex, you need to authenticate and you can only see orders for your own accounts or sub accounts. So let's take a look at some of the requests here. So these are all kind of subcategories of different pieces of data that are available. So if we jump into markets here, so get the best bid or offer, or best bid and offer. And they give an example of like how you would make the request if you were using this particular tool. They might, let's see if this changes. Yeah, so if you're using Python, they'll give you an example of how to make this request using Python or JavaScript. And then they give you an example of what the data that's coming back from that request looks like in the response. So you get the ask size, the bid size, and stuff like that. So this is all very clearly laid out. Every exchange has very similar documentation as to what sort of requests they make. The requests all look a little bit different, so it's not like you can just write code for one exchange and then just change the address to point it to a different exchange and it's going to start working there. Each exchange has their own REST, they call them endpoints, and the data that comes back from those endpoints looks a little bit different. So that's a challenge in creating apps that are going to talk to multiple exchanges. But as you can see here, there's just a ton of different little pieces of functionality that you can tap into here. So this is an example of getting orders based on certain attributes. You can create an order. So this is basically if you want to place a new order on the exchange. So pretty cool. And then WebSocket interface, and I'll show you too here how you can actually play around with these APIs, and I'll show you a tool that I'm using to just kind of test and play around with it. So again, this is the WebSocket interface. Now the URL or the address looks a little bit different. Here it starts with WSS, and so you don't necessarily use the same address as the REST interface, but very similar. So if you, instead of wanting to like query or fetch the best bid and offer by requesting, waiting for a response, you could subscribe to the WebSocket for the best bid offer, and then the way that they have the documentation here for what's getting returned, it looks a little bit different. You kind of got to drill into it to see what they're returning, and they don't show an example of the data itself. Like they don't give you an example of a best bid offer that's coming back. But so yeah, you can see the orders, your orders that are getting filled. So if you want to subscribe to this and just have a stream of your order fills or cancellations coming back, funding data, payments, market data summary. So when new assets are added or delisted. So a lot of different pieces here, account info. So when your balance gets updated. So if you have positions open, obviously your balance is going to be fluctuating. So you can have your app kind of keep an eye on that. And then they do have some code examples here. So actually, if you go to, and I think they have some stuff on GitHub as well. So Python is probably their main one, but I think there's also some other languages on there that they show some examples of how to subscribe to a channel. So yeah, so this stuff is usually pretty well documented by each exchange. Now, one of the tools that I use to kind of test out APIs is called Postman. And this is a really cool tool in that it allows you to connect to anybody's API. It doesn't have to be an exchange necessarily. There's a lot of different types of industries that use APIs as a way to interact with their systems. And Postman allows you to just to play around and connect to those APIs. So let's do an example here, and I'm just going to try this out on the fly. But let's try to get the best bid offer for the market. So okay, so let's copy the address to the clipboard here. Let's make a new request. And let's call this get Paradex BBO. Okay, and now it's asking, so we have to put what market we want in here. And I'm assuming this is in the format of Paradex's tickers that they're using. So we'll do BTC-USD-perp. And let's just go back here. We can actually take a look at their curl. Yeah, so I think that's how it's going to come back. Okay, yeah, example symbol BTC-USD-perp. So okay, so now that we got that, the other thing that we have to confirm is how the request is made. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can submit a request via REST. And usually when you're getting data, GET is going to be the most common. If you're sending a market order, like you're pushing something to their server, usually POST or PUT will be the method, but their docs should tell you here what they're doing. And so for all these market things, these market requests, they're using GET. So let's go ahead and click send and see if this thing actually works. Boom. All right, we got data. It's literally that easy to connect to an API. So got an address, put it in Postman, and we got some data back. We got the market. Sequence number is something that you're probably not going to need, at least in a request like this. Maybe for order tracking purposes, you want to keep track of a sequence number. But the ask size, and basically the time in milliseconds, I believe, that this update was actually happened on their server. So this is how easy it is to connect to an API. Now the hard stuff is actually writing the algo around this. Now let's try an example of a WebSocket. Now let's see how that works. Let's see here. So if we go new WebSocket. Okay, let's try to do a streaming BBO for Bitcoin. Okay, so it's saying path parameters. So, okay, so let's put this into here and let's just try BTC USD perp. Okay, so I am going to show first that this is probably going to blow up. Okay, so we got a 404 error. So this 404, just like on the internet, when you're browsing the web, means the whatever you're asking for isn't there. So what I think is that we actually have to not put this in here, but we have to send a message to their server. So basically, when you connect via WebSocket, that consists of two parts. First is establishing the connection, so just opening it up, and then you have to send a message through the WebSocket saying what it is, what kind of subscription you want to have, what kind of data do you want to subscribe to. So let's take a look here to see if they have some info about what that subscription looks like. Okay, so here is what the subscription message is. Now, the one thing that changes between all these subscriptions is the name of the channel that you're connecting to. And I'm going to kind of condense some of this a little bit here. So now we have to go back and see what is the channel name. And if we go to the publish message, the params channel is BBO dot, and then whatever market symbol we want to connect to. So let's try this. So BBO dot BTC dash USD dash perp. Okay, so first of all, last time we couldn't even connect because we had the address wrong up here. So let's try this again. Okay, so cool. We are connected to the WebSocket now, but we're not getting any data. If we were getting data, you would see this whole thing just filling up with stuff. So now the next step is to send this message here telling the WebSocket we want to subscribe to the best bid offer channel for BTC. So let's hit send, and if we built this message correctly, we should start seeing data. And boom, we are seeing data like right away. Okay, and I can't open it because it's streaming so quickly here, but you can see the timestamp here is updating. So this is like, we're getting now data for Bitcoin. It's just streaming from their server in real time. We're getting the best bid offer. So if I pause this thing or if I disconnect, we can actually, let me see. Stays open long enough where we can actually view it. There we go. Okay, so here we go. So we're pretty much getting the same exact data that we got from that GET request we previously made, but in a streaming format. So we're not having to constantly ask for it. So this is super critical if you're developing especially a high frequency algo where the pricing for whatever it is you're watching, you need to be seeing that in real time. So anyway, this is one of the tools that I'm using to help me develop these algos. I want to hear what questions that you guys have as you are researching this and developing your own algo or looking at developing your own algo. I want to help you guys out. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I need to know what it is that you guys need help with or want me to dive further into. So please drop a comment below. Tell me what you guys are working on, what you guys would want to know more about. And I love to help you out. So I hope you guys are having an awesome week, and I will see you later. Bye bye.